Hey guys, so today we're going to be doing the scoreboard tutorial. Now it's kind of long in terms of the amount of things we need to cover. This is specifically in 1.13, but I'm pretty sure the scoreboard command hasn't really changed too much since 1.12, except that they removed scoreboard players tag. You can't tag people with its own command now, which I'll cover that later too. But this is the scoreboard tutorial, specifically for scoreboard. So first, to make a scoreboard, you have to use this command, scoreboard objectives, add, then you put the name of the scoreboard you want, put whatever name here. Then the last is the criteria type. Typically, you're going to use dummy because dummy just means that the player's score on the scoreboard doesn't change unless you specifically change it. There's a couple different criteria types that you can do. Let's go ahead and look at those. There's air, which actually is an interesting one that I'll have to look at on my own time because I'm actually interested as to see what that's supposed to mean because they added a few new ones. And there's armor. I think that's a new one too. It should probably tell you how much armor the player has. Death count, that's typical. Counts how many deaths the player has. Dummy is the one that we use. Food is to see how much food there is in the food bar. Health bar. So food and health, what they'll do is my scoreboard value is going to be equal to my health or my food. So if I have 5 hearts, then my scoreboard, if I use a health type scoreboard, my score on that is 10 because each heart is worth 2. Okay, so we're going to make this dummy one. And then this lets you see it in the sidebar, scoreboard objectives. So anytime you're doing something that has to do with the objective and not any of the values on it, you use scoreboard objectives. This is not going to change the numbers on it. It's just going to change what's up with the objective, whether you're making a new one, seeing who's on it, or setting its display. Set display is going to show determine where you see the scoreboards. You don't have to set the display. It's just for you if you want to see it. Set display, so then you pick where you want to see it. So you can see it in below name, list, sidebar, and then this is a specific thing that I won't cover because it's a little complicated, but this is basically a way so that specific teams with specific team colors can see specific scoreboards, which is actually pretty useful. But we're just going to put it in the sidebar, and then we put the name of the objective that we're putting in the sidebar, test. And it tells me nothing changed because I already put it in the sidebar before doing this. This is going to let you see all the scoreboards you have, scoreboard objectives list. And this shows that I have a bunch of scoreboards that you have no idea what they're for specifically. Anyway, so now we're going to move on to step 2. This is setting scoreboards and resetting. So if I click this, it does scoreboard players set at P test 1. So scoreboard players means that you're editing some player's value on the score. So what we're doing to my score, the value of whatever player you want to edit, is we're setting it. So we're picking a number that we want me to have on that scoreboard, and the person that we're setting that number for is at P, so whoever's closest. Now this is where you put your selector. You can do at S. I went over a tutorial on selectors before, not too long ago, a couple weeks ago. So if you don't know how selectors work, I have a 1.13 one. Then we also have, so you specify what scoreboard you're modifying the player's score of and what number you want to make it. So I can make this like 2. If I click that, my value on the test scoreboard is 2. Reset, scoreboard players reset selector. So reset is going to reset whoever you pick score, so they have not 0 on the scoreboard, they have nothing on the scoreboard. It's null. 0 and nothing are different because you can test for 0, but you can't test for nothing. So this is going to make the at P, the nearest player, have nothing on the test scoreboard. And by nothing, I mean nothing. You can't see it. The scoreboard doesn't even show up because I'm not on it. Anyway, so I'm going to set it back to 2. Now, being able to set numbers is great and all. Now, where this can come into play is if you wanted to, before, you might be familiar with this, people can put MBT over here for stuff that's like it will set my score to 2 if I have this MBT, which lets me see like it sets my score to 2 if I'm holding a diamond sword, okay? But you can't do that in this update because they added a new thing with selectors, which is why I'm not going over that, because you can check for MBT inside the selector, so it's kind of stupid to use scoreboards for it. Anyway, let's go on to general use. So you're going to do this with scoreboards most of the time. Let's say you have some scoreboard called kill. We'll call it points, and I make it so every time a player steps on a pressure plate, they get 1 point. So I'm going to put this command in here, put a pressure plate. So every time I step on the pressure plate, we're pretending I have 1 point. So how do I do this? I just do scoreboard players. Instead of set, you use add, which means, hey, I want to add a number to the player, which is at P, and I want to set this person, add this person's test score by 1. So you put add to say what operation you're doing. This part right here next to players lets you pick an operation. Scoreboard, players, and then you can pick what you want to do. Add and enable, get, list, operation, remove, reset, set. So what we want to do is add. Who we want to do it to is at P. What we want, the score that we want to add to is test, and the amount we want to add to it is 1. We can change this to 2. Now I'm getting incrementing by 2, so it's 9, 11, 9, 11, of course. So then we can also remove from their scoreboard. So let's say we're doing a mini game and it's like you kill a villager, which is bad, and you lose points because you're not supposed to kill NPCs. So now we want to remove it. So we're going to scoreboard players remove at P test 1. So we're removing 1 from this player's test score. So now I'm losing points. Oh no, I'm killing villagers, of course. Okay, there you go. So you can see my numbers are going down. Some other things you can do is scoreboard players get at P test. So using get lets you return the number. So you see in my chat how it says Cloudwolf has 4 on test. Okay, this can be useful if you're using something that is with execute, which is a lot more complicated, but it can be useful to have a return of the number that the player has with more advanced command things. So just it's good to be aware that you can get the value if you want to. So next is, this is just the last one. You can see all the scores that I have. If I do scoreboard players list at P, it lists all the scoreboards that I have numbers on and what number I have on it. And that's pretty much it for just basic adding and subtracting. Now we're going to make some constants, which is something that I like to do. So first we're going to make a scoreboard specifically for constants, because when you're doing math and stuff with scoreboards, you can't use a constant. You can't say, take my score on test, this 4, and multiply it by 2. Okay, you can't do that because you have to have somebody else's score that equals 2 to get that. So what we do is we make constants. So first we create a scoreboard called constant, and let me set it in the sidebar, just like that. And you can see I have some other constants here. So what we do to create a constant is we do scoreboard players set to constant 2. So 2 is the name of the player we're setting the score to. So 2 is just an arbitrary 2. If there was a player in your world named 2, this might screw things up, but most people aren't named numbers in Minecraft. Next is constant, which is the scoreboard we're setting their score to, and we're setting 2 to 2. Okay? So just like if we do that, now we have a 2 and their value is 2. So anytime we say use 2 space constant, that means we're going to get a value of 2 that we're going to work with. And that'll be useful for the next set. The next set is doing actual maths, right? So this is using scoreboard operations, so you can do more complicated math. Let's set the sidebar to test, because you already know that 2 equals 2. So the way it works is you use the last thing that we didn't go over is scoreboard players operation. Operation means you're doing some kind of math operation. So you do a selector, so at P, then we put what score we're modifying, what objective we're modifying of mine. So we're modifying my test score, and what are we doing to it? So we are going to make it equal. There's a couple things you can do here, and I'll go over a couple of them, but some of them I won't. But we're going to make it equal, and then we're making it equal to some other player's test score. And which player do we want to make it equal to? We'll make it equal to this fake player we made called 2, and we're going to make it equal to their constant score. So now my test score is 2. So what we're doing here is we're picking me, and we're modifying my test score, and we're making my test score equal to 2 constant. Okay? So that's what that does. Now we can do some more stuff, because there's some other things. Plus equals 2 constant. So what this will do is it'll take my test score, add 2 constant to it. Now, if you were using another player that had a test score, it would grab that other player's test score, add to it. But I like working with constants for math. I mean, I don't really use operation on other players between each other. I usually use it with constants. So at p test plus equals 2 constant. So what this will do is they'll take my test score, which right now is 2, add 2 to it, a constant 2 to it, to make it 4. And then my new test score will be 4. And there you go, it's 4. Now take 4, add 2 to it. My new test score is going to be, this is powering the equals. It's going to be 6. If I do it there, it's 8, 10, 12, 14. So now it's incrementing, okay? So then this one will do the same thing as the plus, except it does a minus. So it'll take my score and subtract 2 from it. So 14, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4. Next, we can multiply. So we can take my test score, multiply it by 2, a constant 2, and make that equal to my new test score, which would be 4. So I multiply it by 2 is 8. So my next test score will be 8. Then next will be 16, and so on. Divide just to divide. So 16 divided by a constant 2 is 8. Divided by 2 is 4. Divided by 2 is 2. The last one is percent equals. This one I covered in a previous video. The way percent equals works is it'll take my number, take the modulus, which is percent. Sounds complicated, not really complicated. If you've gone through 3rd grade math, okay, you take if you do 3 divided by 2, in like 3rd grade math, they make you do remainders. So 3 divided by 2 is equal to 1 remainder 1. And if you don't believe me, do the long division. 2 goes into 3 one time. 3 minus 2 is 1, so you have 1 remainder. Okay? So if I do 3 modulus percent 2, the result is 1, because the percent means that you divide it, and then the answer is what your remainder is. So if we do 6 divided by 4, we get 1 remainder 2, because 4 goes into 6 one time. You subtract 6 from 4, and you get 2. That's your remainder. So if we do 6 modulus 2, our answer is just the remainder, which is 2. So 2 modulus 2 will take my score, divide it by 2, tell me what the remainder of 2 divided by 2 is. There is none, so I have 0. Let me set my score. Scoreboard players set at p test 25. Okay, 25 modulus 2. 25 divided by 2 is going to give you 4. 2 goes into 25 12 times. 12 times 2 is 24 with 1 remainder. So I'll have 1. And using this modulus thing is good in maps or whatever the heck you're doing, because if you do test modulus, if you do any scoreboard and you take the percent equals by 2, you can figure out if the number on that was previously there, like the number that this is, what this number is, if that's even or odd. So as you can see, the 25 was odd and it gave me 1. If I set my score to 24, it'll give me 0. So you can figure out if a number is even or odd using the percent modulus, which is good. You can do a lot of other things with it, but it's not important if you're new to this, but later on you're going to be like, wow, that's some good stuff. The last thing is some others. So let's go over some extra things. We got scoreboard enable. This is the only one that I don't think I covered, but that has to do with a special type of scoreboard. So we're going to make a new one, and we're going to go scoreboard objectives add. Objective will be trigger. Criteria, now this is where you get the criteria type, and I don't want to go through all this because this will take forever, so I'm going to hit T, tab, and there we go, trigger. So this is a trigger scoreboard. Trigger scoreboards mean that non-opt players, if you're not opt, then you can't, well, with any scoreboard, if you're not opt, you can't alter the scoreboard by clicking on the clickable text or using a book with clickable text, because you can make books in Telraw that have clickable text to set a score. You can't do that though, but you can with trigger. So you create a trigger scoreboard and you do scoreboard players enable at p, and then we call it trigger. So if I do this to an unopt player for a little bit of time, that unopt player will be able to alter their scoreboard on trigger. So they can do trigger set set trigger, right? Wait, hold on. Trigger. Oh, okay. The trigger like that. Set 1. So if I was unopt, I could type this in the chat and set my trigger score to 1, or I could click on some text in like a book that runs this command, and I would be totally fine. Even though I'm unopt, I can still run the command. So you create the scoreboard called trigger, that's a trigger type. You enable the player that you want to allow to use it, and this is what they're able to do, whether it's through a book that you click or through actually typing it. So you have to be careful how you use that, but that's just a good way for you to interact with players on your server and have like clickable text and stuff. Of course, honestly, I like to use signs because they can do anything on a clickable sign, and they don't need to be opt. If they right-click the sign, it runs the command. They don't need to be opt. So that's why I use signs. So let me remove that because I don't need the trigger scoreboard. All right, so that's pretty much it for this. Now, one additional thing is I've got a challenge for you guys. If you know this stuff and you're just watching this video for fun, then like you don't need to do this. But if you're new to it, I have a challenge for you. This is a challenge. So first challenge would be to design a thing where all right, well, first you can just practice with what we did by just making a thing where you're like, it's a that with a command block, and you click it and it increases your score by 1. Kind of like, cookie clicker or something, okay? Then the real challenge, though, is to design a thing so that when I run a set of commands, just like a line of commands, what it'll do is it'll take my score, whatever I have on a test scoreboard or something, and it will remove the tens place and the hundreds, and additionally, if you're more crazy, all of the places, decimal places. But what I mean is if I have a number like 15, what it'll do is it'll just, when I click the button and all the commands run, it will return just 10. If I have 27, when I click the button and all the commands run, I'll end with just 20. And there is a way to do this using what I've already shown you guys, but with a little bit extra stuff that you might have to think about. So if you're able to do it, try it. It's a little difficult. I'll give you the answer in the comments if you really want it eventually. But anyways, guys, that was all for this one. Hopefully that was useful to you and you're able to play around with some scoreboards. Anyways, guys, see you later. Peace.